multiverse is real.
Not a great plan.
It's no secret war that the MCU isn't doing well. We've seen the box office numbers and the articles. The question is, where did it go wrong? Ask any fan, and you'll get a different answer. Superhero fatigue, bad scripts and rush CGI, not wanting to watch the shows to keep up with the plot of the movies, too many shows and movies, feeling that Endgame was a good conclusion and deciding not to follow along anymore, being exhausted with the constant barrage of "this changes everything" storytelling. Honestly, I don't think it's any one theory. It's probably a combination of things. Each fan has their own reasons for not following as closely as they used to. Where do you think it went wrong? Drop a comment down below. I have a theory that I haven't seen discussed anywhere else, and I think it adds a paradigm shift to the conversation. It's a simple theory. Kang was introduced to the MCU too soon after Endgame, compared with how Thanos was introduced. So in this video, we'll be comparing the timelines of how Thanos and Kang were introduced to the MCU and how each approach impacted the MCU. Before we get started, 2 things. Number 1, if you're new here, please subscribe. Number 2, what is considered canon in the MCU has shifted over time. For the Infinity Saga, we will focus on the Marvel Studios films. For the Multiverse Saga, we will include the MCU Disney Plus shows. The Infinity Saga is made up of phases 1 through 3 of the MCU, and the Multiverse Saga is made up of phases 4 through 6. In the words of Hilary Duff, let's go back to the beginning. It was 2008, and Iron Man was in theaters. The MCU was starting, and it wasn't yet a household name. After a slate of films establishing the universe, 2012's Avengers had the first Thanos cameo. The role was billed as Man Number 1 and played by Damien Poitier. So we had 4 years between the first MCU film and the first appearance of Thanos. At this point, Infinity Stones hadn't even been mentioned. That would happen in one of the worst movies I've ever seen, Thor: The Dark World, in 2013. What did Thanos and the Stones mean for the fans? For non-comic reading fans, this was probably their first introduction to Thanos. For comic readers, they may have already suspected where the story was heading. Overall, these reveals meant that the audience now had questions. Where and when would Thanos pop up next? Where were the other stones? Had the other stones already appeared in previous movies? There wasn't a lot of information on when Thanos might appear next. In May 2014, Josh Brolin's role as Thanos in the first Guardians of the Galaxy was reported. In October 2014, Marvel announced Infinity War Part 1 and 2. Guardians premiered that November. Thanos had one final cameo in Age of Ultron in 2015. And finally, Thanos had a large starring role in Infinity War in 2018 and Endgame in 2019. Let's recap. Between the first MCU movie and the briefest glimpse of Thanos, we had 4 years. 5 years until Infinity Stones got mentioned. 6 years until we saw him properly in a movie. And 10 years until we saw him wreaking havoc in Infinity War. The Phase 1 films did not include Thanos until his cameo in Avengers. This meant the audiences could become invested in the characters on their own without an overarching villain. There were 18 movies before Infinity War, and Thanos only appeared in 3 of them. If the audience was just looking for Thanos, they may have gotten bored waiting for him to show up. However, the stones gave the audience something to continue searching for, even without Thanos' presence in a movie. After Endgame, Marvel closed out Phase 3 with Spider-Man: Far From Home in 2019. So now, let's look at the Multiverse Saga and Kang. Before we dive in, I have a note. Sorting through all the information for the Multiverse Saga was a mess. There were movies that were known to be in production but weren't attached to a phase, shifted release dates due to global conditions, phases being expanded, and phases having overlapping announcements. And even as I'm writing this, Kevin Feige said this whole quote about Kang and Doctor Doom, and how they had been talking about Doctor Doom before pivoting from Kang. There are many projects in the Multiverse Saga. We'll focus on the Kang elements, and address any relevant shifts in release dates. In July 2019, after the release of Far From Home, Marvel announced the Phase 4 lineup, with Black Widow, WandaVision, Multiverse of Madness, and more. At the end, Kevin Feige quickly mentioned the Fantastic Four. We'll talk more about that in a moment. In November 2019, Ant-Man 3 was known to be in production, with a likely 2023 release date. Marvel did not release any films or television shows in 2020, with multiple projects delayed. However, Deadline reported that Jonathan Majors had joined the cast of the third Ant-Man, with sources saying he would most likely play Kang. The article was posted in September 2020. Another article quipped, "Has the MCU found its new Thanos?" So, with no movies or shows from this saga out, Kang was revealed. The villain for the next 3 phases, years in advance. To be fair, I could not find how Deadline got this exclusive. It doesn't seem like a leak to me. Whether this was a leak or not, it still meant that fans knew about Kang. He Who Remains, a Kang variant, had a surprise appearance in Loki Season 1 in 2021. In July 2022, at San Diego Comic-Con, Marvel announced Phase 5, with the third Ant-Man as the first film in the phase. But wait, there's more. Marvel also announced the next 2 Avengers films, The Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars, with release dates for 2025. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, released the next year, in February 2023. Kang the Conqueror debuted, along with the Council of Kangs. In June 2023, the Kang Dynasty and Secret Wars were pushed to May 2026 and May 2027. Another Kang variant, Victor Timely, appeared in Loki Season 2 in October 2023. In July 2024, Marvel announced that the 5th Avengers film was no longer called the Kang Dynasty. Instead, it was called Avengers Doomsday. Robert Downey Jr. is set to return to the MCU, this time as Doctor Doom. So, to recap, no movies or shows had been released in the Multiverse Saga before Deadline reported Kang's casting. From the end of the Infinity Saga to Deadline's article, there was 1 year. Even without the article, we still would have seen He Who Remains in Loki Season 1 in 2021, 2 years after the end of the Infinity Saga. For Kang's first appearance, there were 4 years. For Kang's planned first Avengers film, there were originally 6 years. So, what did this timeline do for the fans? I think it killed a lot of curiosity. It's as though the ending of the Multiverse Saga was already spoiled. Sure, we already know the good guys will win, but knowing the villain so early meant less investment in how the good guys would eventually meet him. Where Thanos was gradually introduced as a storytelling mechanic, Kang's reveal felt more corporate, like, look what's in store for you, as a way to keep the audiences engaged. But I think this backfired. The audience's potential questions about the plot of the Multiverse Saga were already answered by knowing about Kang. Any moment could be explained away by Kang's presence in the MCU. Perhaps audiences would only tune in for the big projects where they knew Kang would appear, instead of looking for clues as to where the overall story was headed throughout all the movies and shows. For example, remember how Marvel announced the Fantastic Four in 2019? For a few years, I kept seeing fan theories about how the Fantastic Four might set up Kang being related to Reed Richards, similar to the comics. So, fans may have been inclined to wait to see the Fantastic Four instead of engaging with the other films and shows. I think Kang had the potential to be a great villain. I was excited to see where the story would go. We just knew about him too early. There are limitations to this theory. 1. If we treat the MCU as a whole, instead of as two sagas, there were over 20 films before Kang's casting was revealed. Treating the saga separately makes it seem that Kang was announced in a relative vacuum when there was an entire franchise already established. 2. Is time the only way to measure the differences between Thanos and Kang? If we look at the sagas in terms of projects, the Infinity Saga had over 20 films, while the Multiverse Saga has over 30 projects. In terms of projects, it may seem that Kang would have had more time to develop than Thanos did. 3. Maybe the Deadline article was a leak, and it wasn't Marvel's intention for audiences to know about Kang so early. If it wasn't a leak, perhaps Marvel felt they had to have some sort of news about the future of the MCU due to the lack of releases in 2020. And again, whether it was a leak or not, the result was the same. Fans knew Kang was the next main villain. 4. As the MCU progressed, it gained more fans and people paying attention to the overall story. So maybe there were more eyes on the future of the MCU with Kang compared with Thanos. Streaming meant that people could wait to watch the movies instead of having the urgency to see them in theaters. Perhaps there was a bubble of fan interest that would have burst anyway. Now, it would be easy to speculate on what Marvel should have done. I sometimes find speculation like this not useful, because the past has already happened, and we, unlike these MCU characters, cannot know an alternate timeline. If I could say anything, I have my own what if. What if the Deadline article didn't happen, and the first time we heard about Kang in the MCU was from He Who Remains in Loki Season 1? I think this would have made the appearance of He Who Remains an even bigger surprise. I can imagine the fan reaction, the theories, the speculation around Kang and what he would mean going forward. As a smaller side note, as I mentioned earlier, the Infinity Stones gave audiences something to look for, as Thanos appeared in surprisingly few projects before Infinity War. For Kang, Marvel did not have an equivalent to the stones to keep audiences engaged. I think Marvel tried to build towards something similar with the 10 rings and Ms. Marvel's bracelet, but those elements seem disjointed. If anything, I hope this video shows there is no substitute for time. That wraps up my look at where the MCU went wrong. I still like the MCU. I like the long-form storytelling, seeing where characters will turn up, and moments paying off years later. I want to see the MCU do well. Where will the MCU go from here? We're already seeing discussion about a Mutant Saga. We'll see how they handle the main villain for phases 7 through 9. If you like this video, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.